Namasrashtham manamapi Sharchi putram atra swarupam Rupam tasyagrajam urupurim maturim goshtavachim Radha kundam girivaram Oho radhika madhavasham Rakto yasya prasita kripaya Shri Gurum Tannatosmi Nindantam Fulakotkarena Vikasat Nipa Prasuna Chavin Rodvi Kritya Pujadvayam Hari Hari Tyuchairvadantam Muhu Gretantam Drutamasrunirjarachayai Sinchantamurvitaram Gayantam Nijaparshadaik Parivritam Tam Gaurachandram Stumar Alipi Pariparita Pravalita Sanandamalokita Pratyasham Sumana Phalodaya Vidho Samodamamudita Vrindaranya Bhuvi Prakasha Madhura Sarvati Shai Sriya Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ullalasa Kalpadruma Jai Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Echaiko Saira Kori Charana Vandam Jaha Hoite Vignana Shobhishta Puran Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Priti Sandarbha, Anuched number 10. So Anuched number 10, we're dividing it into the three portions because, well, the particular principal subject of the 10th Anuched is Utkranta Mukti, but it's also a description of the 5 kinds of Mukti. And a large section of this Anuched is taken up by the question of the permanence of liberation. And so that would be the second part. And the third part is about the siddha-deha, so that the liberated souls have siddha-dehas. So 3 important topics are covered in this Anuched. So what we've been doing, we've been talking about Mukti, and Mukti has been identified with Sakshatkara, with Bhagavat Sakshatkara. And this Bhagavat Sakshatkara, whether it's Antak Sakshatkara or Bahik Sakshatkara, in other words, only experienced internally, or experienced externally with the senses. These 2 kinds of Sakshatkar can be experienced both in the Jeevan Mukta stage and in the Utkranta Mukta stage. So that's what's going to be discussed now. So we start out the main, because in the subsequent anucheds, the other kinds of mukti will be discussed again. So the main subject here is salokya, and it appears that, well, salokya mukti is the principal subject of this 10th anuched. At least for the moment, that's what I'm taking as being the title here. But well, the subjects of this, the main subjects of this anuched are the 5 types of mukti, the fact that mukti is permanent state, and that one has a siddha-deha, that one has a parsha-deha in a spiritual body in the liberated state. So Utkranta. So Utkranta avastacha Sri Prahladastuto. So talking about the liberation in the Utkranta situation. So this is a prayer by Sri Prahlad. In the 7th anuched, we saw a verse by Prahlad from the same chapter. So that was the concluding verse of the 7th anuched, where it was stated that all the sins of Prahlad were dispelled by the touch of Bhagavan's hand, and direct realization of the Supreme Brahman was revealed to him immediately. Being happy, he took Bhagavan's lotus feet to his heart, with his hair standing on end, out of joy, his heart moist and eyes full of tears. But this verse here, he's making a prayer now, because the whole thing, the whole point of that 9th chapter of the 7th canto is that after Nrsingadev's terrible form has appeared and eviscerated Hiranyakashipu, all the gods have tried to pacify him, but no one has been able to do so. Finally, the gods push Prahlad forward, and Prahlad goes and sits on Nrsingadev's lap, and takes his feet. Nrsingadev puts his hand on Prahlad's head, and in that situation, Prahlad has taken the foot of Nrsingadev on his lap. So here he says, Trastosmyaham kripanavatsala duksahogra sansara chakra kadanad grasatam pranitah Badha swakarma virashattamate moolam Pritopavarga sharanam vayase kadanu. So this is an example of Utkranta Mukti. So it's in the shape of a prayer. The portion that Jiva Goswami quotes, he doesn't quote the entire verse, but only the last portion. Ushattama tengri moolam prito pavarga sharanam havayase kadanu. So, O Fulgent Bhagavan, being pleased with me, when will you call me to your feet, the abode of ultimate liberation? So the commentators have usually stated here that it's a prayer for direct service. Bring me to your feet and give me some direct service that I can perform to you. But the earlier part of the verse, which is in the context there of this situation where everyone is afraid, but Prahlad is not afraid, so here he explains. Trastosmyaham kripanavatsala duksahogra samsara chakyaka danata grasatang pranitaha. So I'm not afraid of you, O caretaker of the lowly, or caretaker of the fallen, kripanavatsala. but fear the humiliations, trastosmi, samsara kadanad, samsara chakra kadanad, grasatang pranita, duksahogra samsara chakra kadanad. I fear the humiliations, kadanam, and intolerable sufferings of repeated birth and death in this world, which is swallowing me up. But I am surrendered to you. I am bound up by my karmas in this world. Nevertheless, so I pray to you, when will you call me to your lotus feet and grant me service there? So that's the idea, that the devotee prays to be in the association of the Lord in order to facilitate his service. So this is why Utkranta Mukti, Jivan Mukti is great, but this body, even in a Jivan Mukti state, one dies, and so one wants to have the permanent solution of residing near or with the Lord in his world, so that one can engage in direct service. That's the eternal prayer of the devotee, grant me service, grant me service. Of course, there are different kinds of service. So in this world, in the sadhaka avastha, even if one has attained the liberated stage, even having attained the liberated stage in this body, one continues to function as a sadhaka. He continues to have a sadhaka-deha. But the prayer is always for service. So there can be service and separation, but rather than service and separation, the prayer is always to have separation and union. That's why the Bahik Sakshatkara was considered superior to the Antak Sakshatkara. So that's an important point, because sometimes we hear people saying that service and separation is a higher state than service in direct association. It's not that one is superior to the other, but in either case, the desire, separation has no meaning if one has no desire to be with the object of love. So the point about separation is that separation and union work cooperatively, let's say, and to enhance one's love. This is a statement from the Rasa Shastra, not from the Bhakti Shastra. And yet, in the Bhakti Shastra, as we've been seeing it already through the Priti Sandarbha, it's already been stated several times, and it will be stated several times more. And also in the Bhakti Sandarbha, we found it being stated that separation exists only to enhance the pleasure of union. That nabina vipralampena sambhoga pushti mashnute. So the sambhoga, so kashayite hi vastrado punareva vivardate. It's like the fading of color of a cloth that the favored of the sannyasis, the Gerua rung, the Gerua cloth, one puts the dye into the cloth, but after some time the dye fades, and so one has to refresh it. So that separation is like a refresher for the union. So it's a well-known fact of this material world, but whether it's a fact in the spiritual world, this is a point of discussion. Because in the Ujjvala Nilamani there it says that all, in the highest state of Mahabhav, that all the different states of love, whether in separation or in union, are experienced there in union. That's the highest state, Madhanakya Mahabhav. So it is decided that even though love and separation can be very intense, that let's say the swarup of bhakti is to experience Krishna directly, so that one can render service to him directly. And service in separation, whatever that is, does not, is only fulfilled when it's rewarded with the direct vision of the Lord. And the direct vision, not simply the direct vision, of course. One can have direct vision in Shanta Rasa, but one does not have the bliss of rendering service. So the bliss of rendering service, this is going to be discussed further on, but the idea of in the Utkranta state, in the state after leaving this body, one experiences 5 kinds of liberation. And those 5 kinds of liberation are a permanent state. And the first 4 of these, they offer the opportunity for service. So we have that verse in the 3rd canto where it says, Sarshti Sarokya Salokya Sarshti Samipya Sarupya Ekatvamityuta Diyamanam Nagrihnanti Vinamat Sevanam Jana. That's a very well-known verse where the 5 kinds of mukti are stated, and they are accepted by the devotee, except if there is, only if there is an opportunity for service. If there's no opportunity for service, then the liberation is not accepted. That's why sayujam or ekatvam, the 5th of the kinds of liberation, is not going to be accepted. So we'll see that all in the next, well, we'll be seeing that right now. So here, this state, so to conclude, this is the final state of liberation. So Jiva Goswami said at the end, at the conclusion of that verse, he said, Sa eva antima. Sa eva antima. So antima means the final. So this is the final liberation, that is the Utkranta liberation. So, although this is something that one has to be liberated in this body. It says that, that sadhano ekane, siddhi-o ekane. The state of liberation has to be attained in this life, in this body. Because after dying, if one is not liberated already, what makes one think that one can be liberated after death? So in some religions, the state of liberation or salvation, although most religions, they talk about the final salvation taking place after death. One goes to heaven. One finds out, and in many of the religions, let's say for instance in Catholicism, one has to take the final absolution to say one's confession and receive the sacrament of Holy Communion at the time of death. And then this guarantees that he is in a state of grace. And if he dies in a state of grace, then he goes to heaven. But of course, that is an external ritual, and this is the kind of thing that Protestantism was opposed to. It's not the ritual of the final absolution or confession or taking the sacrament of Holy Communion, that none of this can actually guarantee salvation. So the salvation was not through works or through rituals or through even the holy rituals of the sacraments in the church, but that one had to be justified by faith. In other words, one had to be fully committed to the life of faith, and that comes closer to what we as Vaishnavas believe. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, yang vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram, that tantam evavagachanti sadata bhava bhavita. And so one attains that which one is thinking of or what one is concentrated on at the time of death. So if one is not fully absorbed in one's consciousness, and of course the standards of consciousness that are expected, well, we're seeing what they are here, you have come to a point in your relationship with God where God has actually revealed himself to you fully, internally and externally. That's more than just a state of grace, that is a state of realization, Sakshatkar. So the antima, the ultimate state of liberation, is that after dying, one is permanently situated in proximity to God, and that proximity takes on the characteristics of service and love. So that's what Jiva, Prahlad, when he says, "When will you call me?" Havayase kadanu. Havayase is like it's in the same root as who. Ahuta. We had that word before. That's the past participle. When Narada was saying that when he was singing on the Veena, that Krishna appeared in his heart as though having been called there. So now in the reverse way, Prahlad is saying, "When will you call me? When will you call me?" There are some prayers that says, when will you tell me to serve you like this, and to fan you or to massage your feet? When will I hear the sweet words of the Lord telling me to do it this way or to do it that way, to please him in this way, that he could please him in this way or in that way? When will I be able to, when will, like in Narottam Das Thakur's songs, when will Rupa Manjari, or when will Radharani herself, or when will Lalita and Vishaka, especially Lalita, when will Lalita give me some indication with her eyes to come forth and to do some particular kind of service, to give tambula, to give some other condiment, or to fan, or to give chandan, some kind of direct service, to dress Radha, to help bathe Radha, to sing songs for Radha, to play music for Radha, to dance for Radha, to bring Radha. In the Ujjvala Nilamani, there's a whole list of different kinds of services that we will talk about later on in the book. So the final state of liberation means to be permanently in the abode of the Lord, where one can render service. So here he says, Muktischa panchadha. So here we have the list. Salokya, sarsti, sarupya, samipya, sayujya bhedena. Tatra salokyam samanalokatvam Sri Vaikuntha vasa. So mukti is of 5 types. Salokya means to have the same abode as Bhagavan. That is to say, residence in Vaikuntha. So that's the first kind of it. Sarshtihi tatraiva samanaishwaryam api bhavatiti. So sarshti, so salokya, because of the nature of service, the salokya is almost inevitable. So further down, it'll be given, salokya is given some priority. It's the first in the list. And so, generally speaking, salokya can be given priority. Sarshti, less so, but even so, sarshti, in the statement by Jiva Goswami, sarshti is tatraiva samana aishwaryam api bhavati. So, residing in Vaikuntha, while residing in his abode, to have the same opulences as he. So the opulences also, their mystic powers, all these things are useful in terms of rendering service. But if there's not an opportunity for rendering service, then they are superfluous. The sarshti, the aishwarya, the opulences. Sarupyam tatraiva samana rupatadi prapyate iti. So Sarupya is similarly to have a form there like his. So this is Salukya is considered, is still a part of Salukya, that one has a form similar to that of Krishna. So Sarupyam doesn't mean to have a form exactly like Krishna. So in some cases in Vaikuntha, four-armed forms and yellow cloth and dark color and so on and so forth, even up to having some of the exclusive symbols of Narayan are found in the residence of Vaikuntha. So that's a Sarupya, so that's to have a form like his. But Sarupya, it doesn't necessarily mean to have a form exactly like that of Vishnu, but to have a form that is equal to Krishna in the sense that it is a pure Satchidananda form. The Manjari's forms, and this will be explained a little bit further down in the third section of this anuccheda, it talks about the siddha-deha. And then you have samipyam, so samipa gamanadikaritvam, so Jiva Goswami. So he could have said tatraiva, but it's not necessary to say tatraiva anymore, because going into Krishna's presence means you have to be there. So to be able to go into Krishna's presence, to walk in and out of his room, and just like stated about the Manjaris in Radha and Krishna Lila, that they have that capacity to go and be present in Radha's kunja. Tat preshta, how does it go again? It says that Tat preshta di saki kuladapi nikshankochita bhumika. So the Manjaris led by Sri Rupa Manjari, I offer my obeisances to them, because they perform various kinds of service, and in order to perform those kinds of service, they can enter into the presence of Radha and Krishna, even in their most confidential and private moments. And then the last one, Sayujam. So here, Sayujam Keshanchit. So here he's added a particular, let's say, caveat that not everyone wants this Sayujam. So Keshanchit. So this Sayujam or Ekatvam has been more or less set aside as not being so desirable for Vaishnavas. So some people get Sayujya, which means they enter into Bhagavan's body. Otherwise, generally, it means entering into Brahman. Sayujam keshanchit bhagavat Shri Vigraha eva pravesho bhavati. Entering into, so pravesha, entering into, or sometimes merging into. So you can become able to directly experience what Krishna experiences. That's the idea of Sayujya. But that's not really so pleasing to the devotee. This comes into the category of ahangrahopasana. So to be able to experience Krishna directly, to experience his experiences, that is not so desirable for a devotee. But at the same time, one has to understand that the ability to experience Krishna's pleasure and happiness and distress, that this is integral to being part of the spiritual universe. Just like with Radha, said the gopis experience Radha's happiness and distress. That Amara Rayara Dasi, Amara Rayar Seva Bhalavasi, Rai Jokon Je Bhave Thake, Amara Ghire Boshi, Rai Hashile Amara Hashi, Rai Kandile Amara Kandi, Hashile Amara Hashi. So the Radharani cries, we cry. Radharani laughs, and we laugh. If Radharani feels the ecstasy of Krishna's kiss, then the gopis experience that also. But they don't do it directly, and they experience it through Radha, and they experience it through Krishna. So in actual fact, the pleasure of serving Krishna comes from experiencing his pleasure. If one doesn't know how Krishna is pleased, then one can't please him. If one doesn't feel directly, and this is a common feature of human life, that when one pleases somebody else, then one pleases oneself. This is a characteristic of human psychology that people take a long time to learn. And this is the secret to understanding service to God arises out of recognizing that when that simply the activity of serving itself, even if one does not serve God directly, but if one serves others, if one serves those one loves, if one acts as if one loves someone, then in other words, if one has an empathetic feeling of unity with another person in love, and then one directly experiences their happiness or distress according to, and one attempts through one's own actions to mitigate their suffering and to enhance their happiness. That's what service means. So each of the 5 kinds of service, Shanta, Sakya, Dasya, Vatsalya, Madhur, they are all different ways of bringing happiness to the object of love. So that can only be done when one has a sense of identity with the object of service. And that sense of identity is carried on to its ultimate conclusion in Madhura Rasa, where the sense of identity is so overwhelming that there's no sense of difference even, just like in that verse from Kavi Karnapur, Alankara Kaustubh that was quoted earlier on, that there is the idea of you and me. It's inappropriate to use the personal pronoun when talking about us because there's no separation. That is the union in love. So ekatvam, this idea of ekatvam, it's not altogether outside the realm of liberation, but we take it with a little bit of caution. That's all. That one doesn't want to be united with Krishna or one with Krishna, either as Brahman or as Bhagavan, in order to be able to experience Krishna separate from the idea of service. That's the point that's being made. So now here's an important sentence. Salokyadi shabdanam muktyadi shabda samanadi karanyam cha salokyaditva pradhanyena. So he says that the words salokya, etc., so that means these 5 words, salokya, sarshti, samipya, samipyam and sayujam, that these 5 kinds of liberation, that these words are taken as being synonymous with the words mukti, etc. So mukti, we've had other words that mean mukti before, right? We were told mukti, kaivalya. What else was there? The word, and now Bhagavat Sakshatkar. This was also taken as being a synonym of mukti. So you have all these words that have already been given to us as mukti, and now he's saying that these 5 words, if I take them alone, samipya or sayujya, that these words mean, in effect, liberation. And the reason for that is that salokyaditva pradhanyena, that mukti is primarily characterized by these 5 characteristics. So here the translation, the words salokya and so on are synonymous with words meaning mukti because residence in Bhagavan's abode, etc., are predominant characteristic features of liberation. So one of the translations that was made for this sentence was to say that salokya, but salokya adi is stated here. It's not that salokya itself is predominant of these 5 kinds of liberation. Nevertheless, as we've seen here already, by the use of the word tatraiva, in the first 4 at least kinds of liberation, that salokya is a necessary or an integral part of them. But anyway, these 5 words, if I say Bhagavat Samipya, that means liberation. If I say Bhagavat Sayujya, it means liberation. If I say Sarshti, or any of these 5 words, they all are the same as liberation. Now he goes on to explain about this. So now we've had Antak Sakshatkara and Bahik Sakshatkara. So now Jiva Goswami is going to specify a little bit more on this. So he says Tatra, so even with these 5 kinds of liberation, he says that in Salokya, Sarshti and Sarupya Matre, Prayontah Karana Sakshatkara. All right, so now matre, the word matra is important here because it restricts or limits the concept of liberation. So we had samipya, so samipya coming close, so samipya coming close for direct liberation, so that would be stated in the next one. So here we have the 3 kinds of liberation, salokya, sarshti and sarupya matre, prayaha antahkarana sakshatkara. So the experience, even in Utkranta Mukti, even in the state of permanent liberation, that the experience or the direct realization of Bhagavan in these first 3, Salokya, Sarshti and Samipya, Salokya, Sarshti and Sarupya, that these 3 kinds of liberation give one an experience, an internal experience of Krishna. Because one could be on the same planet with Krishna, on the same world with Krishna, but not to be directly in his presence. One can have the form and have the opulences of Krishna, but not be directly in his presence. So that means that but nevertheless, if one is in the spiritual world, like Narada, who is able to experience Krishna directly internally at all times, in the spiritual world, one is experiencing Krishna internally, directly at all times. But in the hierarchy of liberations, samipya is actually the one where one has bahi sakshatkara. Samipya prayoho bahi. So we've already learned that bahi sakshatkara is superior to antak sakshatkara. So therefore, samipya praya bahi, that samipya mukti is the best, because there we have primarily the direct experience of Krishna through the spiritual senses of the spiritual body in the spiritual world. Whereas the other ones, that was why the word matra was important in that first sentence, because that was restricted. So samipya, you can also have salokya, you can also have samipya. You can have sarupya, you can have sarshti, and you can also have samipya. It's not that one is restricted to one or to only one. You can have a whole smorgasbord of muktis. Just like in the way that it was stated, that sayujja is antara eva. That the antak sakshatkara is primarily in sayujja mukti. So if one is in sayujja mukti, if one is present within Krishna's body, then one does not experience him externally, but experience him internally. So now, out of these 5 types of mukti, internal realization of Bhagavan is characteristic primarily of salokya, sarshti, and sarupya. In samipya, it is mostly external, and in sayujya, it can only be internal. So, right again, so the point that was being made already, that bahi sakshatkara is superior to antak sakshatkara, and samipya is the mukti in which bahi sakshatkara is predominant. Therefore, samipya mukti, for the purpose of rendering service and for the purpose of experiencing Krishna directly through the senses. When one is rendering direct service, if one touches Krishna's feet in order to massage them, if one exercises one's capacity to fan in order to give pleasure to Krishna by making a cooling breeze in the hot sun or in the heat of the day, or in any other particular kind of service, directly present in the company of Krishna, this is the most desirable thing for a devotee. Without this desire, Antak Sakshatkara is also not possible. How can you have even the vision of Krishna? How would Krishna be pleased to even give you that partial vision of himself internally through a sfurti? Now that word sfurti comes up next, so that we have to understand this word sfurti. So sfurti is a difficult word, and here in this particular case it was difficult to translate it. But even so, this internal, so here he says tatapi. So what was stated immediately prior to this, he was saying that samipye prayobahi sayujye chantara eva. I have to check that reading because I think that should be chantara eva or chantar eva. Anyway, antak sakshatkara, the idea is that it's inward. So now he makes some further statements on that. So tatapi, because he's been talking about Bhagavat Sakshatkara, not Brahma Sakshatkara. So he's talking about Bhagavat Sayuja, not Brahma Sayuja. So we have these two kinds of Sayuja to be merged into Brahman. So that's the general understanding of Brahma Sakshatkara, to attain oneness with Brahman. But if you recall back in the 7th Anuccheda, we were talking about Jiva Goswami having a different conception of Brahma Sakshatkara from the Advaitavadins. So he doesn't see Brahma Sakshatkara as a total loss of identity within the identity of Bhagavan, the loss of one identity for another. Although there is some equivalence. Nevertheless, here he says, tatapi prakata sfurti lakshanam tat sushuptivat anati prakata sfurti lakshanat brahma sayujat vidyate. So he's making a distinction here between the Bhagavat Sayuja and Brahma Sayuja. So in Brahma Sayuja, he has that sushuptivat, as in a deep sleep, one has a not a very clear sfurti, or, so we're translating sfurti here as manifestation, but I'm not altogether happy with that. A sfurti, the etymology of sfurti, sfuranam, it means to an explosion of light, a revelation. So perhaps revelation would be the best word here. An epiphany, a theophany. The theophany of Bhagavan. In other words, this manifestation of the Lord, the experience of the Lord in a sfurti. So sfurtis, in some cases I've translated sfurti as hallucination, because we talk about sfurtis in the experience of separation. And later on we'll come into that, I'm sure, in the Priti Sandarbha, but it's something that's in the Ujjvala Nilamani and is talked about, of course, in other circumstances also. Jiva Goswami especially talks about it, though, in the case of separation, that when one's separated from the object of love, that in the experience of separation, one sometimes has these sfurtis, and one sees Krishna as though he were actually present, even though one's separated from him. This is comes up very nicely in Hamsa Dutta, in Rupa Goswami's poem, the Hamsa Dutta, when Lalita is describing Radharani's state in separation from Krishna, and how she's in a state of this divine madness, and that how sometimes she says things like, Krishna, it's very well that you've gone away, so if you've gone, then go, and be gone. I don't want to have you in my presence. If you keep coming back like this, right? She's talking to him as if he is there present. You keep coming back and then doing all these naughty things with me. You touch me and you remind me, let's say, of the intimacies that we had in the past, and now you're coming back and doing that again. So Radharani is talking like that. Everybody sees her, hears her talking like this, but there's nobody there. It's a totally hallucination. She is seeing things. That's why Babaji said in one of the earlier commentaries that this antak sakshatkara, it can be mistaken as madness on the part. How he's seeing something, it's just like a hallucination. So the difference that Jiva Goswami is drawing on here is that there's a prakata sfurti lakshana. So in the Bhagavat Sakshatkara, that he is getting a prakata sfurti lakshanam. So he has some direct awareness and consciousness of Krishna that is there. It's not just a It's not a hallucination. It's a direct experience, but it is manifest, a manifest experience. Whereas in the Brahma Sayuja, that experience is anati prakata. It's not so clear. So even so, this internal realization of Bhagavat Sakshatkara has the nature of Bhagavan's clear and visible manifestation, and is thus distinct from Brahma Sayuja, which is characterized by an indistinct manifestation, such as in the state of deep sleep. So there's a question of indistinct manifestation, what is exactly going on, right? So anati prakarta, it's not very clear. In the stage of Brahma Sayuja, one is so identified with Brahman, and of course the form of Brahman is nirvishesh, no roop, nothing. So how can there be a distinct manifestation of Krishna? So it's like the state of Sushupti. So as you probably know, and as you have read all the Sandarbhas, and as you've read Vedanta, you know the importance of Sushupti. There are 3 states of consciousness, and then there's a 4th state of consciousness. So the Vedantists are interested in this 4th state of consciousness, but they place a lot of importance on Sushupti, the state of deep sleep. Because in the state of deep sleep, the consciousness is in a state of suspended animation, let's say. You can only know that you've been asleep. So this is also the same thing if you talk about, if you look at, let's say, for instance, the Yoga Sutra, where it talks about the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So when one's in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, not just Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but in all the states of Samadhi, there's a state of self-forgetfulness. And in that state of self-forgetfulness, one is only really aware of the state of Samadhi when one comes out of it. So when one comes into the Vyuttana stage, which means that one is out, there's the state of Samadhi and the state of Vyuttana. So when one is in the state of Samadhi, one is completely forgetful of one's own identity, and one is completely absorbed in this either Brahman consciousness or in this consciousness of one's own Swarupavasthanam, right? This is Swarupavasthanam, which is the goal of yoga, Kaivalya. So in the state of Kaivalya, one is aware of nothing, really. It is like the state of Sushupti, like the state of deep sleep. And when one comes out of the state of deep sleep, then one can say, oh, sukham aswapsam, nakinchit abhidisha. That I was very happy while I was in deep sleep because I did not know anything else. This is how the Brahmavadis explain the state of liberation. That it's like the state of Sushupti. So in the Sushupti state, we are in a kind of a temporary liberation that makes it possible for us to exist in the state of bondage. Because in the states of wakefulness and in the state of dream state, in either of those states we are experiencing duality, happiness and distress. And we are experiencing different kinds of suffering. So therefore, those are the state, the conditioned state. But of course, for the Turiya, the fourth state of liberation that is talked about by the Brahmavadis, is to draw the conclusions of Sushupti, that there is a state of consciousness where one is happy, but one is at the same time not aware of anything. So Brahma, stage of Brahman realization, is to be in that particular state of consciousness with awareness. So to have awareness in the state of liberation means an anati prakata sfurti. It's there, but because it's formless, the sfurti is not very clear. So sfurti here would appear to mean you can have a Brahma sfurti, but a Brahma sfurti would always be anati prakata. So a Brahma sfurti would be like for the Gaudiya, for the Vaishnavas, as was being explained there earlier in the 7th anuccheda. We're talking about the particular vision that Jiva has of Brahma Sakshatkar. The Brahma Sakshatkar does not have a total loss of identity within Brahman, but one has a sense of experiencing Brahman, something that is one has almost totally lost one's separateness, but nevertheless there is a separateness. In order to be able to talk about having sakshatkara, in order to talk about having an experience, one must maintain a distinction between the two. So here, what Jiva Goswami has simply done here is to distinguish between Bhagavat Sakshatkar and between Bhagavat Sayujya and Brahma Sayujya. So now, Jiva Goswami is still fighting his battle against the Upanishadic or the Advaitavada conception of Brahma Sayujya. And so he refers to an important section of the Chandogya Upanishad. In this Chandogya Upanishad section is called the anyway, this is a special portion of the Chandogya Upanishad in the 7th book of the Chandogya Upanishad. It's Utkranta Mukti avastayam api. So even in the state of after death, of liberation after death, there is a Vishesha Sfurti. And that is accepted by the Chandogya Upanishad. So this Vishesha Sfurti, so we're talking about a prakat. So his prakata sfurti lakshanam of the Bhagavat Sayujya. And in the Brahma Sayujya, it was anati prakata sfurti. But now he's saying this Vishesha Sfurti. So Sfurti is connected to Vishesha. So the Sfurti is connected to the particular characteristics and qualities that are possessed by Bhagavan. So the Bhagavat Sakshatkara, obviously, those things are being experienced. So the special manifestation, so in the liberated state after death, so I was wondering whether this special manifestation, because it says Vishesha Sfurti, we're talking about the previous sentence was distinguishing between Bhagavat Sayujya and Brahma Sayujya. So now Jiva Goswami is looking for support from the Upanishads to confirm that there is such a thing as a Vishesha Sfurti, such as in Bhagavat Sakshatkara, in the state of Utkranta Mukti. So once again, where he's giving us a quote where the state of liberation, and this is not the state of liberation Jeevan Mukta, because we can talk about the Jeevan Mukta going around here and there and doing all kinds of things, and he's still in a state of liberation even while he's in this body. But after death, what happens to the Brahma Sayujya? What happens when one has attained liberation after death? Well, according to the Advaitavadis, nothing. he becomes merged into Brahman. He has no more rebirth. He doesn't return to this world, and he's situated in this impersonal state of Brahman, of identity with Brahman. So Jiva Goswami finds this important passage from the Upanishads, from the Chandogya Upanishads, which says, no, that's not true. That in the Utkranta Mukti stage, one also has Vishesha Spurti, that one has experiences that are characterized by variety, characterized by the appearance of duality. Of course, we say it's not duality. We're talking about Vishesha. This is why the word Vishesha has so much importance in the Vaishnava Vedanta, starting with Ramanujacharya, because he says that there's still non-duality, so it's Vishishta Dvaita. So the Advaita, the non-duality, we accept that, but it's the Vishesha, and there are still special characteristics even within the stage of liberation, even within the stage of Advaita. So absolute non-duality does not mean that there is an obliteration of the individual identities of the Jiva and of God, nor that the God's powers, the God's energies are not manifest. That the Vishesha, the God's beauty, that God's energies, that God's pastimes, that God's world, that all these things continue to exist even in the liberated state. This is where we differ. So here is this passage from the Chandogya Upanishad. Sava esha evam pashyan evam manvana evam vijanan atma ratir atma krira atma mituna atma anandaha saswarad bhavati tasya sarveshu lokeshu kamacharo bhavati. So this passage actually goes on much longer, but we'll just stop here and not go back and refer to the entire passage from the Chandogya. But you see the familiar words there from the Jnana Marga, which we discussed at some length, and we've been talking about it here also, but it's in the Priti Sandarbha in greater length. The ideas of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, and then Vijnanam. So here Manvana. So it says, it says that one should desire to see the Atma. That was in Sa Va Are Gargi Atma Atma Va Are Drashtabhya Srotabhya Mantabhya Ganididhyasitabhya. So the end point was Drashtabhya, to see. So he says, so Sava Esha Evam Pashyan. So seeing like this. So seeing one's divine nature and seeing the divine nature of God. So Evam Manvanaha, to come into the position, this is also present participle, and to see, to understand in that way. Vijanan, so Vijnanam, this is the end results, this to be realized in that way. Then what happens? One becomes Atma Ratihi. One loves the Atma, one loves the self. Atma Krida, one plays with the self. So here you can say the super self. One plays with oneself, but it doesn't mean this is God playing with himself. So God plays with himself, and the Jiva is an extension of himself for the purpose of play. The Jiva is an extension of God's energy for the purpose of love. Atma Ratihi, Atma Krida, Atma Mituna. So the pairing of this, Atma Mituna, how could that be? Mituna means a pair. Right? Mituna, the word Mituna in the constellations, in astrology, Mituna means the twins. So the twins, so mituna, the twins, but a mituna, maitun means sex, right? So atma mituna can be to have this erotic relationship with the self. So here it obviously can have a kind of an undesirable meaning, but here it indicates, however unclearly and however without direct statement, but obviously this is what grows into our understanding of the divine love, the madhura rasa of Radha Krishna in Vrindavan Dham. So Atma Mituna and Atma Ananda. So one takes pleasure in the self, one has joy in the self. This is a bit of a difficult concept when one is in bodily consciousness. One can conceive of the self when one is in bodily consciousness, but one conceives of oneself as something separate. When one is in God consciousness, then one does not experience oneself as separate from God. But the oneness with God eliminates the distinction that is made between oneself and the world. The distinction between oneself and the world is obliterated because one sees only God. One sees the world as a manifestation of God. And so because of it, one sees God everywhere in the world. So this is why in the Upanishads, we are always being told to see the self in all things. When we say that we see the self in all things, to not make that distinction that I am separate from the rest of the world. Nevertheless, in order to love the self, one must separate oneself from the self. If I say I love myself, then you're making two different things, I and me. I love myself. So you're drawing a distinction between I and me, as though they're two different things. You're observing yourself from an external position as a witness. So the end conclusion of this is that he says, Swaraj bhavati. He becomes self-effulgent. Swaraj. So usually Swaraj is used to mean emperor, right? Rajate. The word Raja comes from Rajate, but Rajate means to be effulgent, to have light. So just like a king, the emperor, he is the light of the empire. He is independent. These are the words, the word Swarat means totally independent. So here self-effulgence is perhaps not the best word to translate here. I think that independence would probably be better. He is independent. He is imperial. He is totally independent, like an emperor. He hearkens to no one. And tasya sarveshu lokeshu kamacharo bhavati. And he travels to all the planets as will. Kamacharo. So kamacharo can mean behaves as he wishes, or he goes where he wishes. Kamacharo, kamam charati. So all those things are characteristic of someone who has vishesha sfurti. He's still active. In order to have rati, in order to have maitun, in order to have krida, in order to have ananda, all those things require vishesha. That's his point. And in order to sarveshu lokeshu kamacharo bhavati, even in the state of liberation, even in the state of utkranta liberation, he is able to act, he is able to behave he is able to do according to his own will. All right, so let's read the commentary here by Satyanarayan Das Babaji, for whose pleasure I am doing this. Of course, it's for your pleasure also, my dear friends. I hope that this consultation with the Priti Sandarbha will lead to a clarification, at least of where Gaudiya Vaishnavism stands, of Jiva Goswami's philosophy, and of a proper understanding of the Bhagavatam, and that this knowledge, I just hear we had Sa Esha, Evam Pashyan, Evam Manvana, Evam Vijanan. So we study this text, we reflect upon it, and then we realize it through samadhi. So, this is Babaji's commentary here. After explaining the soul, who is liberated while still living in the world, the Jeevan Mukta, Sri Jiva Goswami now explains the Bhagavat Sakshatkara experienced as Utkranta Mukti, or the Antima Mukti. Now this word Antima, Jiva Goswami went out of his way to explain that this was the Antima Mukti, so he's talking about ultimate liberation. So ultimate liberation means after you die, you go to Krishna Loka. That is the ultimate liberation. But as I was saying before, you have to experience liberation here and now. There's no question of a liberation afterwards if one has not experienced Jivan Mukti in this self-same body. Even though there is language like that in the Upanishads, there is language like that, even with Putana. But we were talking about that, of course, in several previous sections, like about Shishupala, the example of Shishupala, that when he was about to die, and when he saw the discus in Lord Krishna's hand, then his true identity as Vijaya came back to him. And that's when he had his realization. So the realization comes here, in this world. And then only afterwards, with death, one gets the fulfillment of that liberation in eternity. So this is followed by an explanation now of the 5 types of mukti. These 5 types of mukti are listed by Kapila Dev in 329.13, so we can refer to that. It's also hinted at by Vishnu in 9.4.67. So this is 5 types of mukti in 329.13. This section of 329, chapter 29 of the 3rd canto is a very important chapter, and that is where the Uttama Bhakti, the characteristics of Uttama Bhakti as being one where there is no other cause, and where there is no other achievement other than Krishna. The idea that it's ahaitaki, apratihata. This is explained, that yad madguna sruti matrena mayi sarva guhashaye. That when one is in the state of true, pure devotion, of nirguna bhakti, that's the point. The chapter 29 of the 3rd canto is about saguna bhakti and nirguna bhakti. So this particular characteristic of taking the 5 kinds of liberation only if they are accompanied by service, this is one of the characteristics of nirguna bhakti. And this is also hinted at by Vishnu in 9.4.67. That's in the teachings of Narayan to Durvasa. So Sayujya is of 2 types, Brahma Sayujya and Bhagavat Sayujya. Because here the discussion is about mukti from Bhagavat Sakshatkara, Sri Jiva Goswami describes only Bhagavat Sayujya. In Brahma Sayujya, there is no explicit sense of one's separate existence. One's identity remains implicit within Brahman. Thus, Sri Jiva Goswami compares it to the dreamless state of sleep. There are no words to describe it because it is an indeterminate experience, like a baby's experience of eating chocolate. A baby has no means and no words to express what it is tasting. In Bhagavat Sayujya, one experiences what Bhagavan does. However, Vaishnavas do not desire either type of Sayujya, because there is no possibility of service in them. In Brahma Sayujya was rejected as a Purushartha because nobody wants to become bliss, but rather desires to experience bliss. Bhagavat Sayujya is rejected by pure Vaishnavas because there is no scope in it for any service or priti. Indeed, pure Vaishnavas consider Bhagavat Sayujya to be more despicable than Brahma Sayujya. At least in Brahma Sayujya, one is not making any claims for one's ego. If one says, Aham Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi, well, it's not the same as saying, Aham Bhagavanasmi. Though many Brahmavadis, they are unable to understand that distinction. But for a devotee to say, I am Bhagavan, is even more despicable than to say, I am Brahma. I can say I am Brahma as a devotee because it has a particular kind of meaning to me. But I can't get that meaning out of I am Bhagavan. This is called Ahangrahopasana. So this idea of Ahangrahopasana, why is it being, this is why I was making all those comments earlier about seva. Ahangrahopasana, it appears in the Pancharatra and in the Tantra as a particular preliminary practice to engaging in deity worship or engaging in ritual worship. So that particular injunction is there because the Upanishads tell us that Devo Bhutva Devam Yajati, that one has to become of the same quality as God in order to serve Him. So the interpretation, the understanding of that is that one has to have a relationship to what pleases God and what displeases God. If one only acts to please God, if one knows God and if one loves God, then one only acts to please God. So in that particular state, one identifies with God. And so the sense that I am God or I am Gopal or whatever is stated in these scriptures where Ahangrahopasana is mentioned, their goal is to place one in a position of identification with the object of service so that one can serve him. But of course, as with all of these things, the idea of non-duality is understood in two different ways, both by the Vaishnavas and by the Brahmavadis, and we are entrenched in our view. All right, I'm going to leave it here. And so tomorrow we'll go on with the second part of the 10th anuccheda, and we'll talk there about the question of never returning, that the permanence of the liberated state. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Purnam madah purnam midam, purnat purnam udachyate, purnasya purnamadaya, purnameva vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.